There are moments in life when you look back at a decision you made, and you realize it wasn't really your decision. You felt a subtle pull, a quiet pressure, a sense of inevitability, as if the choice had already been made for you long before you noticed. Most people think manipulation looks obvious, loud, aggressive, coercive, but the real danger is silent, invisible. A soft rearrangement of your attention that bends your choices without touching your awareness. Robert Cialdini, the father of modern persuasion psychology, spent years infiltrating sales teams, cult-like organizations, and marketing groups to understand one terrifying truth. The human mind is not a fortress. It's a door, and most people don't even know where the handle is. In the next few minutes, you will discover 5 psychological techniques so powerful, so subtle, so effective, that when Cialdini first documented them, some researchers argued they should be illegal, not because they're inherently evil, but because, in the wrong hands, they can shape a person's behavior without their conscious consent. This is not a list. This is an X-ray of the mechanisms that quietly guide your decisions every single day. At work, in relationships, in marketing, even in the conversations you think you're leading. And once you see them, you can never unsee them. Most people assume they make decisions through logic, through careful thought, through the quiet voice of reason that says, this makes sense, this doesn't. But Cialdini's research revealed something far more unsettling. Your brain often decides before you think, and then invents a justification afterward. This is why subtle psychological triggers are so dangerous. They don't force you. They simply tilt the floor beneath your feet. So you slide in the direction someone wants, while believing you walked there on your own. One of the strongest triggers is what Cialdini called persuasion, the moment before the message, the frame that prepares your mind to agree. A salesperson doesn't need to convince you. He just needs to shift your attention to the right emotional doorway. A manipulative partner doesn't need to win an argument. She only needs to subtly direct your focus toward guilt, fear, or obligation. The trap is invisible because it happens in microseconds, in the spacing of words, in the tone, in the posture, in what is mentioned before the real conversation begins. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The people who manipulate you most effectively are not always your enemies. Sometimes, they are the people who know you best. If this is already opening your mind, consider liking this video. It helps the channel reach more people who need this kind of clarity. In 1974, a young psychology researcher walked into a busy shopping mall with a clipboard, a friendly smile, and a plan that would later shake the foundations of persuasion science. His name was Philip Friedman, a colleague whose work Cialdini studied closely, and his experiment was disarmingly simple. He approached random shoppers and asked a single question. Do you consider yourself a helpful person? Most people, caught off guard, said yes. Who wants to admit the opposite? But here's the twist. 20 minutes later, a second researcher approached the same shoppers and asked for help carrying a large, heavy box to a distant part of the mall. The results were staggering. Shoppers who had said yes to the first question were 700% more likely to help with the box, not because they suddenly became kinder, but because they had been subtly nudged into seeing themselves that way. Their identity had been preloaded. Their behavior had been quietly redirected. This is the terrifying beauty of Cialdini's insights. Once someone defines who you are, even in a casual moment, you begin acting to protect that identity, often without noticing. And in the hands of someone skilled, it means they can make you generous, guilty, compliant, doubtful, trusting, or obedient, all without ever asking directly. If you're fascinated by the hidden architecture of human behavior, subscribe to Inner Truth Lab so you don't miss the next insights. Here is the moment where the curtain finally lifts. Cialdini discovered that persuasion is not about arguments, intelligence, or charisma. It is about controlling the psychological environment in which a decision is made. The 5 almost illegal techniques all operate on the same principle. People don't choose based on facts. They choose based on the state of mind they are placed into right before the choice. This means, if someone can guide your attention, they can guide your judgment. If someone can shape your emotional tone, they can shape your behavior. If someone can define your identity, they can predict your next action. And this is the secret that makes these techniques so dangerous. 1. Identity priming. Get someone to describe themselves a certain way. and their future actions will align with that identity. 2. Scarcity framing. Make something appear limited, and the brain creates urgency faster than logic can intervene. 3. Social proof. Seedings show that people like you are doing it, and resistance collapses. 4. Authority illusion. A symbol of power, a title, a uniform, a subtle claim, dramatically increases compliance. 5. Reciprocity triggers. A small favor, a small gift, a small kindness, and suddenly your moral compass whispers, you owe them. Each technique works because it bypasses rational thought and speaks directly to the primal systems designed for survival, not reflection. And once you understand this, a disturbing realization emerges. Manipulation isn't loud. It's quiet, polite, friendly, wrapped in the illusion that you are acting freely. Now that you've seen how these psychological triggers work, the real power comes from using this knowledge to protect yourself and, when necessary, to communicate more ethically and effectively. Here are the practical steps, written as a narrative of internal mastery rather than tactics of manipulation. 1. Notice the emotional doorway. Before any decision, pause for one breath. Ask yourself, what emotional state am I in right now? If you feel rushed, guilty, flattered, pressured, or obligated, you're inside someone else's frame, not your own. 2. Separate identity from action. When someone says, you're the kind of person who helps, or a smart person would do this, recognize it as identity priming. Respond with, let me think about what makes sense, not about who I'm trying to be for you. 3. Challenge the scarcity. Whenever you hear last chance, limited seats, act now, imagine removing the urgency like diffusing a bomb. Scarcity isn't danger, it's a script. 4. Inspect the authority. Ask, is this person truly qualified or just dressed like it? Uniforms, job titles, status symbols, these are props. Look behind the costume. 5. Break the reciprocity spell. Someone gives you a favor, a gift, a kindness. Accept it with gratitude, not obligation. A gift becomes control only when you internalize the debt. 6. Reclaim your attention. Whoever controls your focus controls your choices. If you feel your attention being subtly pulled, step back, widen your awareness, and reset the frame. And here's the final, uncomfortable truth. Most people aren't manipulated because they're weak, but because they're unaware. Have you ever noticed these patterns in yourself or someone else? Let me know in the comments. Your perspective may help someone reading. There is a quiet danger in understanding persuasion at this depth. Once you see the machinery behind human decision-making, it becomes tempting to use it as a shortcut, a way to bend people toward your will, to win arguments, to sell more, to influence without resistance. But here is the line that divides clarity from corruption. The moment you use these techniques to remove someone's ability to choose freely, you are no longer persuading, you are violating their autonomy. Cialdini himself warned that these tools must be handled like fire. They can warm, or they can burn. They can illuminate, or they can blind. If you use identity priming to help someone become stronger, it's guidance. If you use it to make them act against their better judgment, it's manipulation. If you use social proof to calm someone's fear, it's support. If you use it to pressure them into something they don't want, it's exploitation. If you use reciprocity to build trust, it's connection. If you use it to trap someone in a sense of obligation, it's coercion. And here's the uncomfortable truth most people don't admit. The line between influence and manipulation is not in the technique. It's in your intention. So use this knowledge to defend your mind. Use it to fortify your boundaries. Use it to recognize the traps others set. And if you ever use it yourself, use it with the integrity you wish others had when dealing with you. Imagine for a moment the world as a vast, dimly lit room. People walk through it believing they see everything clearly. Yet most move guided by faint strings they never notice. Threads of attention, emotion, identity, urgency. But now you've seen the strings. You've seen the mechanisms behind the curtain. And with that sight comes a kind of inner stillness, a calm awareness that most people never touch. Because understanding persuasion is not about becoming untouchable. It's about becoming awake. You begin to sense when someone is bending the air around you, You feel the shift before the words even land. You notice the subtle invitation into guilt, the quiet push into urgency, the gentle pull toward compliance. And instead of reacting automatically, you pause, you breathe, you choose. You reclaim the space between stimulus and response, the space where freedom lives. In that space, you become someone different, not paranoid, not defensive, but clear, calm, hard to sway. Someone who sees the architecture of influence like an engineer inspecting a bridge. And once you reach that level of awareness, the world no longer feels intimidating. It becomes navigable, understandable, almost transparent. It's the real power of psychological insight. Not the ability to control others, but the ability to remain sovereign within yourself. Walk through the world with this clarity, not as a victim of invisible forces, but as someone who finally understands the quiet machinery of the mind.